Hey, Al, what's going on? So, Jeff, Dean, Marcus, how are you? Daisy, good to see you again. What's new? What's exciting? Hi, Kim. Hi, Gavin. David, Isaiah, how are you? Did we have a good weekend? What's going on here? OneDrive, yeah, network's good. And Blackboard is being slow today. Maybe what was it about? Shelby? I just started responding to those about 10 minutes ago, so maybe double check real quick and see. I think I got through them real fast. There we go. Gosh, dang, what's going on with Blackboard today? What's our trivia topic for today? Oh, yeah. Actually, no, I probably didn't get through all those from Friday. Come to think of it, yeah. I'll go back and look through them today, so don't worry about that. If you don't hear back from me today, then yeah, let me know. By Wednesday, I suppose. Yeah, let me know on Wednesday. But I think I know what you're talking about. I'll get it taken care of. Yeah, sorry, my bad. I forgot about those from last week. I'll get it cleaned up. So what's our trivia topic today, guys? What are we going to do? I'm open for suggestions. So let's see. We're still on Module 3 here. So just remember, Module 2 discussion or be here for the live stream twice. That's fine. By Sunday, February 14th, Chapter 2 and 3 homework and Chapter 2 and 3 quizzes. So we got another week here. It's only the 8th. And so we got another week where we're working on this module. So, and I don't think there's anything different about this one. Because this is, what, Module 2? Yeah, Module 2. Excuse me. Yeah, okay. The next module, we will have an additional assignment, if I'm not mistaken. I think that is our first case study. Yeah, first case study. So I'll talk about that next Monday unless you have any questions on it. But this stuff won't be due here for quite a while. Not till March 1st or February 28th, last of the month. So don't worry about that just right now. Yeah, no, this is 16-week. Who won the 55th Super Bowl? Yeah. So Tom Brady did. Duh. I guess. So, but the... I don't know. It was a particularly bad game, in my opinion. I was bored out of my mind. The commercials were terrible. They've just gotten worse over the years. It's almost like they try too hard in some respects. I guess there were a couple here and there, but I don't know. I was dinking around on the computer. I wasn't even really paying attention to the game. I mean, it just couldn't really get me sucked into it. I was hoping that would be a much better game than what it turned out to be, but I don't know. That we can always hope. There's always next year, I suppose. So that's okay. Yeah. Well, football's done. Time to look forward to baseball now. So any hockey fans out there? So you're getting paid right now. March Madness is coming up, so I'll probably do a bracket this year. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. I haven't even looked at it. College basketball is one of those things that I only watch it for a month. Kind of like most people. Very fair weather fanny on that one, but whatever. There's no way I can keep up with it. So, but yeah. So we need a trivia topic. Let's see, what do we got? Manka, you want to do soccer? Let's do soccer today. That's a good one. Yeah, let's definitely do that. I think you suggested that last week, and so there are definitely some websites out there that we can use. And so, in order to put American football where it belongs for the next several months, we will do soccer today. Go Avalanche! Yeah, no, the Avs are great, but I don't know. Hockey, I can't keep up with hockey either. It's on at weird times, so. It's hard to catch. So, but I definitely have some friends who are very, very big hockey fans. All right, so let's dive into the chapter today. Today should be pretty short. We're just going to cover a little bit of chapter 3 here. And then we'll come back on Wednesday. Oh, announcements. So apparently there's like rumblings going on at the county level that they're going to reduce like the COVID thingy, the terrorism dial, down to the point in time where we might be able to come back on campus. Now, don't panic yet, all right? And don't get too hopeful yet either, all right? So no decisions will be made at least for a couple more weeks, all right, on that one. And so I think that they're the powers that be may be meeting today. But I know that they're not making any changes to the schedule, and we're not making any changes here until at least not until after, I think, the 22nd. And even with that, look, I'm going to be really blunt with you. The way the class is set up, we're just going to roll like this for as long as we can go. And even if they do let us come back on campus, we're still a hybrid class technically, so it'll only be 1 day a week. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is completely optional. So I think maybe some folks are getting a little bit optimistic here. And it would be cool if we could do some of the things that we normally do in this class. In class, but at the same point in time, understand that, hey, look, I know it's going to be a while before any of you can probably get your hands on the vaccine and stuff. And so if you want to complete this class 100% online, that's absolutely fine. We will still do at least 1 day a week of live streaming, even if we can't come back. It is my goal to get us some FaceTime if it's at all possible, but again, not mandatory. Just understand that I'm going to play it really cool and just go by what I hear officially. But I saw that there are rumblings already, so about Pueblo going down to like blue level or something like that. And what would that do for campus? Can we all come back on Monday? And blah blah blah. The answer is no. All right. So we're gonna have to wait until we get permission, and so I will let you know as soon as we do. All right. So, but anyway, this is still working for me. I hope it's working for you. And like I said, we're kind of in the we should be kind of in like the routine of things here, and so the rest of the semester is kind of look like this too, as far as workload and stuff goes. So let me know if it's too much, too little. Well, nobody's ever complained about having too little work. So in all the years that I've been teaching, but at the same point in time, I hope you're kind of settled in and that you've gotten kind of used to the flow of things. Comments, concerns, questions on that, please let me know. I don't know about that, Jeff. I don't know. I think that's the whole thing about the bottleneck there is that, well, if they reduce it down to blue level, then they don't need to actually test anymore. I guess that kind of... all right, so, if hospital capacities and things like that are okay, all right, maybe we don't need to do as much testing. But at the same point in time, I mean, that doesn't reduce your chances of getting it. So, and the couple of people that I've known who've gone through it now, it's not fun. All right? It wasn't lethal for any of them. That's good. But that does happen too. So, I don't know. And so, no, I don't have any word on that. Like I said, if I hear something, I will let you know. Stay tuned. But just... rest assured, if you like doing the class this way, you can do it this way the entire semester. That's absolutely fine, regardless of what comes down. If you don't like the class this way, I get it. So, and I will keep you posted. So, anyway, yeah. So that's enough about COVID. Man, everybody's tired of talking about that, aren't we? It's 2021. We didn't get a good Super Bowl right off the bat. We're still talking about COVID. So that's okay. I'm still optimistic about the rest of the year. All right, so let's dive in. Chapter 3. Here we go. Let's talk about some of the stuff in here. Chapter 3 is all about perception. So it's one of the more important chapters in the entire book. Because oftentimes what people perceive is way more important than what actually is. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, barriers to accurate social perception. So meaning that, what are some of the blinders that you put on yourself, all right? And this is really important to understand as a manager because you're going to do this a lot. You see other managers do it. I'm sure if you've been in a situation where you were in any kind of leadership role, or if you've been working directly with someone who was in a leadership role, so a team captain, something like that. and you see things that they didn't. That I'm gonna tell you right off the bat. This all goes back to perception problems. So, yeah, no, I hear you on that one, Matt. I know the same thing. There are some people that I know that it was like, oh, it was fine, and they just made me stay home for a week. And then I know a couple people got wrecked by it too, and they're not ones who would, I mean, we're talking about pretty healthy dudes. So, I mean, it's ironic. The one person that I know who's like a committed smoker was the one who was just like, it was like 2 days, that was fine, Whereas the other one who's, kind of a fitness freak, he got wrecked by it. So I think it's a little bit rando. I don't know. I'm not that kind of, I don't know that much about it. So, yeah, and so I'm not going to like wander into this perception trap here. All right, but let's talk about it a little bit. The perceptual process is where we're going to begin. All right, so what is perception? Perception is just the means by which one, basically filters through all the information that comes around you. All right, so we call that stimuli, external stimuli, and you assign meaning to it. All right, so it's a process of making sense out of the environment in order to make appropriate behavioral response. That's a rather clinical way to think about it. Really what perception is, it's just how you kind of like navigate the world, all right? And when you're presented with new information, how do you internalize that in some ways? Or do you choose to reject it? Okay, so that's certainly, a part of the perceptual process as well. And so really what it comes down to, and I mean, there's so many things that make this up. So it's your past experiences, it's what your friends have been telling you, it's maybe how you were raised in certain ways. All these things like contribute to giving you basically like this process by which you just chew down information, and then you either change your behavior because of it or you don't. All right. And so that whole perception piece is really important to us as managers, because it affects not only the way in which we interact with our employees, but it also affects the way in which they respond to us. All right. And so understanding this is a good place to start with some of the meatier parts of organizational behavior, because really when it comes down to it, understanding that what people think is often more important than what is. All right, is one of those blocks, those blocks that a lot of managers, they just stumble over, okay? And if you can get kind of past that in some respects and start to realize, okay, so, the way that I carry myself, the way that I behave, the expectations that I set, and the way in which I communicate with my employees, these are all things that are extremely important to managers, but they're all related to this, all right? So, which is this idea of perception and trying to influence individuals' perceptions to basically get them to do what you want to do, all right? So now some people would call that manipulation. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but at the same point in time, there are elements to it that are true, okay? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to organize the way in which you present yourself so that people perceive it correctly, okay? Or the way in which you want them to perceive you, okay? And so there's a lot of tools that will help you with this, but understanding your own kind of like perceptual process is probably the most key in the beginning. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that today. All right, and so the first thing that you have to understand is this idea of perceptual selectivity. So oftentimes we see what we want to see. And a lot of times people would like automatically jump to the conclusion that that's a bad thing, but that's not true. All right, so there are times where if we have these perceptual blinders and things like that, they're basically things that we've developed through experience. And they become like shortcuts for us in terms of our mental, the amount of mental gymnastics that we're willing to go through in order to actually really get our fingers around a concept. Think about it like this. Every time you meet a new person, okay, and you've been doing this for years now, so there's probably a process that you have by it. Okay, in terms of like, okay, you say you got a new job, okay, and you just brought on a new employee. Say you've been there a little bit longer. And so you've seen this process happen a couple times, all right? And this might be true in other situations. Think about like when you start up a new class, all right? And so if there are people in the class that you've never met before, but then there is somebody that you have met, chances are you're probably going to go sit next to them. All right, in some respects. Well, maybe not. Maybe there's someone you avoid entirely. But see how you're already organizing all the folks in the class by using the information that you're given just by walking in the room on that very first day. Same thing's true when you meet people on the job, all right? So you're going to have a perception of an individual very quickly, all right? And that's based upon how they approach you. Do they smile? Do they have a firm handshake? Do they look you in the eye? All these different things. These are different, pieces of stimuli, information that are coming from the outside, but you're already using it to organize. So if you have someone with shoulders back, it gives you a nice strong handshake, looks you square in the eye and smiles, all right, you're going to have a better perception of that individual than if they, kind of, oh, hi, how are you, Pat? It's nice to meet you. Right off the bat, you're going to have a different perception. And so to say that people jump to conclusions is a bad thing isn't necessarily true. All right. Can it be a bad thing? Absolutely. All right. So, there's no beating around that bush. But at the same point in time, it's important to understand why people do this. All right. And it just comes through your own personal experience. And so, going through this entire thing, when you're actually paying selective attention to objects or people, all right, so you just understand that there's some form of exposure out there. You're going to pay attention to that. And so we all have little details that we glom onto the first time that we meet somebody. I was like, oh, do they stand up straight? Do they have that firm handshake? Do they enunciate clearly? We all have our own little pet peeves. Or things that we perceive as being indicative of somebody who is worthy of paying more attention to, shall we say. All right, and then you're actually you're gonna internalize that. That's a perception process, and you're gonna interpret it, and then you're gonna change your response, or you're not. Okay, and so that the action after that isn't necessarily as important as understanding the entire process from stem to stern. Okay. Because sometimes, you might choose to stone face it and just not not react at all. In other ways, if you have someone who instantaneously, the minute you meet him, you kind of have an affinity for him, you like him, all right, you think they're a solid dude or whatever, all right, you have this tendency to kind of mirror that, all right, and so, yeah, it's nice to meet you too, kind of thing. Hey, how's your weekend? And so, how you respond to it is often more indicative of deeper things, all right, that have already been baked into you, rather than what that individual person themselves is just doing on their own. I hope that makes sense, all right? And it's why things matter, all right? So in business, and it's why that we, even within the whole Zoom room thing and stuff like that, there's a lot of traditions, and there's a lot of social hoops that don't really go away, okay? So, if you were to be interviewed over Zoom, I bet you'd probably dress up for it. You're not going to dress down, all right? So even when I used to be in class, all right, so I always wear a shirt. I gave up on the tie years ago, but I'd wear a nice button-up shirt. I'd wear my khakis or something like that, or my slacks and stuff. And so this is about as low dressed down as I can get, and to still feel comfortable. All right, so I'm wearing jeans right now. Right, I'm not going to sit here and wear my PJ pants on Zoom, because there's still a perceptual expectation out there. In some ways, is hey, this is still a professional environment. We need to at least meet it halfway. And so, things like that, and the way that these external influences affect your behavior, the important point is that they get baked in over time, all right? And it becomes difficult to change them, okay? And so, and that has everything to do with, whether or not you dress up for this, or whether or not you mind your P's and Q's, whether or not you're 5 minutes early to something like that. All right, all these little social cues, are all related back to perception, because you're trying to influence somebody else's perception of you. Okay, so now the thing is that maybe you haven't done this in a management, or a leadership type role, but I guarantee you've been doing it your entire life. All right, so think about the ways in which you try and influence the perception of your friends, or the perception that your friends have of you. Okay, or your family, all right? If you grew up in a household with multiple siblings, all right, you're a professional at this point in time, okay? So, especially if you learned how to play your parents off against each other, or a parent against another sibling or something like that. You're trying to influence perception in a way or another, all right? And so now as managers, you need to be a little bit more professional about it. okay, and realize that, okay, that the reason why I'm trying to do this is because I'm trying to get X out of somebody. I'm trying to get them to comply. I'm trying to get them to perform better. I'm trying to get them to, take responsibility for the situations, actions, stuff like that. So there's a lot of different ways in which you're trying to do it, but, it's not just it's not purely venal anymore. It's more so along the lines of, well, it's your job to manage people. And so this is going to help you with that a lot. It's going to make a lot of the a lot of the decisions that you have to make go a little bit more smoothly if you understand how people are going to see that. Okay. And so let's talk about some of the external influences on selective attention here, okay? So these are things that affect these. Physical properties always affect this in one way or another. So the first thing that you're going to notice about somebody, usually within the first 2 minutes of meeting them, is you're going to have a pretty good fix on their gender, and you're going to have a pretty good fix on their age, okay? And those two things are going to influence your perception of them in some respects, all right? The other things that I think are fairly easy to determine when you just first meet people is like their general level of intelligence, all right? So all they have to do is speak to you a little bit. And if you run into somebody who doesn't quite have the vernacular or the vocabulary that's appropriate for the situation, you're starting to think a little bit less of their intelligence right off the bat. All right, same thing is true with just some very basic things. You can tell pretty quickly when there's like bad mismatches between something, so you can tell that somebody's trying to pull something off and it's just not working. So like one of the things that I used to do when I used to interview people, and I don't know how I got fixated on this, but sometimes I think it was a buddy of mine who was like this diehard entrepreneur. I mean, he was one of these serial entrepreneurs who go out and start like several businesses, and he had a tip that just stuck with me for years, and it turned out to be more true over the long run than not. And so when I was interviewing people, and especially in a professional environment where it's not buttoned down, it's not like casual, like business casual, but it'd be a little bit more buttoned down kind of situation. You could kind of tell when people weren't comfortable in those clothes, all right, if you looked at their shoes, all right? And so the reason for that being was like anybody can slap on a watch or something like that, or, put on the nice jewelry or whatever, or do your makeup really well. All right, anybody can do that, but, there was something about someone who consistently took care of their shoes. All right, it just kind of spoke to this thing that over the years they would, actually take the time to maintain those and things like that. And, you look at them and maybe they're using a shoe tree or something like that to keep it from getting wrinkled and stretched out and stuff like that. Or you could tell it, like sometimes I'd see people who had like a really nice suit on or something like that, but then they had like these black sneakers on. All right, and there was just something about that was like, wait a minute, you're not comfortable in that suit, are you, dude? Kind of thing. And so, just like simple physical properties like that, we could see them as stereotypes, and a lot of times they are, and there's no excuse for that. But you're going to develop your own regardless of whether or not you're conscious of them. Because I guarantee you, like, it's very difficult to get to that point in time where you can ignore your previous experiences, all right? And in fact, I would argue that a lot of times you shouldn't do that, all right? Because it's actually what makes you a little bit wiser down the road. But you got to stay away from some of those obvious traps. But like shoes was just one that was kind of like it didn't know anything like regarding like anything about gender or age or race or ethnicity or anything like that. It was just like one of these things. It was like, do you take care of yourself? And are you comfortable in a suit? And if you wear really nice shoes, it was one of those things. Like, yeah, I think you do. Yeah, I don't know. I might be completely off base on that one. That's another quick tip if you really want to, impress somebody at some point in time. If you actually know different types of shoes and things like that, if you see someone who's actually wearing something that's a little bit rare, it's like, oh, those are really nice. And there's a floor shines. I get those too, so, something like that. It was just always an interesting little nuance. And if you compliment somebody on their shoes, I've never had someone respond poorly to that. So don't compliment people on their hair, man. So you never know how they're going to take that one. But I've never had someone turn around and say, oh, what do you know about it? When it came to their shoes. Anyway, that's okay. So these physical properties, they do actually matter. All right. There are a lot of personal influences on selective attention. All right. And, you know, we can dive into these in some greater detail, but really, the book does a good job of talking about just these two. So the idea of response salience and response disposition. So response salience, has a tendency to focus on objects that relate to our immediate needs or wants, and so shoes are a good example of this. And so it's easily identified. So a worker who is tired from many hours of work may be actually sensitive to the number of hours or minutes until quitting time. And so just think about that. If people are focusing on one little thing, okay, it's probably because it's really indicative of what they're really looking for. Okay, so when I focus on somebody's shoes, I'm looking for someone who's professional. All right, but likewise, I've worked in a lot of union environments. Okay, and you know, if you have employees who are just generally unhappy with things and stuff, I mean, they tick down the minutes until, you know, it's quitting time. And so they'll start packing up their lunches and getting their bags together and their coats and things like that. While they're still on the clock, they'll be putting them on the break room table so they can just grab and go. Something like that. That should be more indicative of a larger problem rather than just the fact that they want to get out of here on time. And so if you have those things where people focus on individual little things, oh, here's a good one for you, actually. So don't tell my colleagues about this one. All right, so... But, you know, I've noticed this one in the past too, and this took me a little bit of time to get past, all right? So, but if you have a professor out there or a teacher, maybe in high school or something, who is absolutely fixated on cell phones, okay, in class or something like that, and if you were, like, looking at your cell phone, it was like this sin, you know, this cardinal sin, you know, or if they had like a system where you had to put it in the box or something. I don't think anybody does that anymore, but if they do, you know, think about that. Why are they focusing on that specifically, okay? I guarantee you it's not because you feel distracted, okay? And so think about that one on a certain level in some respects. And so, you know, people who like really get fixated on objects, you know, that's what we call response salience, all right? So when you're focusing on something that is indicative of the larger problem, okay? You're going to see managers do this all the time, all right? So you're going to have the managers has to have the TPS reports in on by Friday, okay? You're going to have those other managers who will like absolutely thunder away, you know, if someone's 2 minutes late to the office. I'm one of those guys personally on the job, not on class. I don't care in class, all right? But on the job, very much so, okay? And so think about why that is, all right? So that idea of response salience, why we focus on individual things is really important. The difference to that, so the difference between this response disposition versus salience. Salience is almost like a trigger thing, you know, where there's like something that actually gets that going. Response salience is more about those immediate concerns, but response disposition is a tendency to recognize familiar objects more quickly than unfamiliar ones. And so what this means is, and it works kind of in both ways, because it means that like if you have that like, you know, aversions towards cell phones in the classroom or something like that, it means that you're also looking for it constantly, okay? And so you're very good at like, oh yeah, no, he's obviously looking at his crotch over there, he's got a cell phone. So it's like, oh, well, actually, she's got her book tipped up a little bit. I bet you she's got her phone on the table right there, you know, kind of thing. And so, and that can create perceptive problems too, because if you've ever been in one of those situations where, you know, you do have somebody who's got a pet peeve or something like this, and they're constantly looking for it, and you, in some cases you can get away with this. I wouldn't necessarily encourage it, but sometimes it was always kind of fun to catch people, all right, who are looking for that. So like an example of that would be like, yeah, maybe I would be looking like this, you know, and kind of like mimicking the you know, the finger motions or the shoulder twitches that maybe I do have my phone in my lap, but I don't. All right, and then if someone called, hey, you know, make sure you don't have phone, just to stand up and what phone, you know, kind of thing, you know. Or you have that manager who's constantly looking for like something. I had one years ago, and he was really big on timekeeping, not necessarily being there on time and stuff like that, but making sure. And this was before we had an electric punch clock or anything like that, and so we actually had like a sign-in sheet, all right? I'm sure you can still find some places that do that. But literally, you know, he was just absolutely paranoid about any kind of time card fraud. Now, to be fair, he had some legit reasons for that, okay? But at the same point in time, you know, he would be literally standing at the front door with a stopwatch, all right? And then he would come out, and then he would check the log, because we worked outside at the time, and then check that, to his own records when he saw us coming in from the parking lot kind of thing. And we found ways to get around that one, too, with him in particular, by coming in through the other entrance or stuff like that. And then he'd go look at the time log, and how do you log in at 8 o'clock? I didn't have him on my log, you know, kind of thing. And then he'd come scream at you a little bit, but then we would say, hey, man, I parked over there today. My car's on the other side of the building, you know, kind of stuff. And so this response disposition, you got to be careful with it, because sometimes it's legit, and sometimes it's one of those things where, yeah, you should be looking for little things. Okay, and those little things do actually matter, but really when it comes down to it, you got to be careful, okay, because you might start to fall into that selective perception trap, all right, which we're going to get into here in just a minute. But before we get going too much further, my clock is totally wrong. My clock died. Where's my, here we go. Yeah, we're a half-hour mark. Let's do some trivia here. All right, so soccer trivia is the topic for the day. So let's see. I don't want to ask you any like really weird questions on this one. Yeah, like, you know, who won what in 1996 or something like that. We're not going to do anything like that. Let me see if I can find something a little bit better. Do we need to focus on soccer? Do we need to do like Premier League or what? Let's see. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Oh my gosh, these are all individual people. Yeah, we need something a little bit easier than that, I would think. Let's see. No, that's too easy. Let's see. Here we go. Oh, okay. Here we go. Which country has won the highest number of World Cups? Which country has won the highest number of World Cups? Go. So, all right, cool. Hopefully that was not too bad. So, most World Cups has gone to which country? Well, I hope this is up to date. Okay, Gavin, I have Brazil. Yeah, Jeff, you say Germany, and Marcus says Spain. My trivia question here says Brazil. So, let's do the Google thing here. Yeah, Dean Brazuk, huh? Yeah, no, it looks like Gavin beat you too, but let's try it. That's most World Cups by country. Oh, yeah, it's close. Brazil, as of 2020, so last year. What is it? The World Cup's only every 4 years, correct? But yeah, it looks like it's Brazil. So, and we got some who are close there, but considering it's like the Olympics, if that's accurate, it's every 4 years, right? It's not every 2, right? Yeah, it's every 4. You know, that's quite the accomplishment. Because I mean, think about it. That'd be like 20 years of NFL dominance. So, or at least that's the idea. Oh, Brazil has 5. Okay, got it. All right. So, yep. All right. So, good job, Gavin. So, let me know what you want there. Email me. All right, let's move on. We're going to spend Thursday or Wednesday talking about work-related attitudes and behavior, which include things like job satisfaction. And so all we have to do is get through just a little bit more of this and we'll be donezo. And that's because we do want to spend some time about barriers, okay, about accurate perceptions. So, okay, cool. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, every 4 years. So, because it was like off years, if I'm not mistaken, because the Olympics would happen like, you know, say like in, when was the last Olympics? 2016, so the World Cup was 2018. I think they're 2 years off, aren't they? Yeah, because I would really get into it during the Olympics. I mean, I'm kind of I love the Olympics whenever it comes around. So, I mean, we got robbed last year, and all of Japan got robbed, thanks to the COVID. But, I don't know. Hopefully the next one will be pretty good. Because it'll be like, 8 years since we've had one? Lame. Actually, I don't know. I'm going to have to go look. So I don't know if they just got delayed or if they actually got pushed way back. But no, I always liked watching soccer. And that's when I really get into hockey, too, was during the Winter Olympics. But then, then everybody would get really excited like 2 years later about the World Cup. And so, I'd watch that too. So I'd have to relearn the entire sport every single time. So anyway, let's talk about some of these things that are problems, barriers to accurate perception and other stereotyping. Let's talk about this in a little bit more detail. All right, selective perception and perceptual defense. All right, so stereotyping is basically it's the tendency to assign attributes to people solely based upon their class or category. And so the problem with stereotyping in particular is that sometimes there's really a grain of truth behind it, deep down. And, but it's really your inability to see past your limited experience with individuals, okay, and then taking that limited experience and actually applying it to an entire group of people, all right? And so, like, I could say that, all right, someone who wears bad shoes, I could be stereotyping against them because I do think that they're a little bit less professional. Yes, but that one's worked over the years, all right? So, in some respects. So, it's not something I can simply discard. All right. And again, I would say that I'm not necessarily putting that on any individual class or group of people other than people who wear bad shoes, to interviews, kind of thing. And so you got to be really careful about stereotyping because there's really a slippery slope behind it. And so the argument would be, well, don't do it ever, okay? And I would argue that, well, you're going to anyway, all right? So because really when it comes down to it, you learn a lot over the course of your life, and it's really difficult to reject some of the things that you've learned. I think this trick to this one in particular is to be very, very careful that you don't necessarily take something, all right, too seriously, all right? Because when you start taking it seriously and you start to become a little bit more of a universalist about it, so it becomes a little bit more dogmatic, that's where it becomes problematic, all right? Same thing, selective perception. We'll talk about this here in just a little bit more in a minute. Selective perception, another thing, process by which we systematically screen out, discredit information we don't wish to hear, okay? And so, this one, I think this is much more common than stereotyping is in the modern world. So maybe when I was first involved in the workforce, I saw a lot more stereotyping. I would say that over the last 10, 15 years, we've gotten a lot better about recognizing those things. But selective perception, we have not, okay? And selective perception is just the idea, all right, that I want to hear certain things and I will refuse to entertain other things, all right? I think we've gotten worse at this one. And then the same thing with perceptual defense. I think we've gotten worse about this one. It's to ignore or distort information that is personally threatening or what we would consider to be culturally unacceptable. I don't know if this one... Yeah, this one's kind of scary nowadays. We'll have to see kind of where that one goes. But just the whole idea that, just ignoring something is actually a valid defense in order to protect your own view of the way things are going. That's not good either, okay? And I would argue that we've gotten a little bit worse at this one. Particularly in school, maybe not so much on the job. Although I'm going to be blunt with you, it's been about 10 years since I've been really fully involved in the workforce as a non-educator. And so, but as an educator, the last 10 years, I think we've gotten a little bit more defensive about no, that's the way we want it, and so Any entertaining anything from a different point of view is almost viewed as weakness. That's not very good. All right? So I would say that some of the more clever businesses out there and more responsible leaders don't do that. I would say that, it makes for an easy defense, though. And it's unfortunately become a little bit more acceptable. So let's talk about that without wandering too much into the political weeds, because I don't want to do that. Right? We've had enough of that. All right, but let's talk about stereotyping. So stereotyping, is common barriers of perceiving others at work as stereotype, widely held generalization about a group of people. So I think we all know what stereotyping is. We've all seen it in action too. I know you've seen it. Yeah, I mean, if you went through an American high school system, I know you've seen stereotyping. Okay, I don't think it's possible to make it through it without actually seeing that. On the workforce, you see it, but it's a little bit different. All right, it's not quite as blasé and it's not quite as open as it is in maybe a high school environment. It's not. I'm going to tell you right off the bat. So I started working when I was 14. So I've spent over 30 years in the workforce now. It's not as bad as it used to be. All right. So, when I first started, and I mean, you still see it in some respects. And so the way that I want you to think about it is like, all right, so there's a stereotype that does exist out there that you are all very familiar with, and it probably really gets under your skin. Okay. And that's the whole idea of generational bias. Okay. And so the idea that we have different generations out there, and there's a certain generation out there that starts with the letter M, which I shall not repeat here because I believe it's an extremely unhealthy stereotype. All right. Oh, and now there's a new one that starts with Z out there as well. And so there's, and then there's other ones. Okay. One of them starts with a B or something like that. I don't know. All right. And think about these things. And so, the whole thing is B's are like this, M's are like this, Z's do this, and X's don't matter, blah, blah, blah. Those are all stereotypes, man. They are terrible stereotypes. And if you ever get to that point in time where you feel like, you're being like basically excluded from some kind of trait or some kind of quality or some kind of group because you belong to a particular group, ta-da, that's stereotyping. Okay. So I will say that generational stereotypes are alive and well today. And if they get under your skin, I saw that 30 years ago, all right? And so 30 years ago, it was much more ethnically driven. It was much more gender biased than it is today. But if you get that same feeling, okay, that, it's like, well, that's messed up, that's stupid, that's dumb, and that's not right, and blah, 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 about any of the generational stereotypes that are going on out there, that was going on, think about that, except for rather than you being of a particular generation, you were a particular race or a particular gender. That's what it used to be like, all right? So I'd say it's gotten a lot better, all right? Just with my own personal experience on this one. All right. But you got to watch out for this one. All right. In particular. So age stereotypes they're so common. All right. And it's the one that we kind of like, poo-poo a little bit. But at the same point in time, understand that some of these other ones that we've gotten more serious about over the years, they used to look like this. All right. And so I think that's gotten a little bit better than it has in the past. But again, maybe I'm an optimist about it too. And so I'm fairly optimistic. And I have been blessed to work in some very diverse organizations and some very not ones. And so I will tell you that the ones that were very, very diverse, they are much, much more common now than they used to be. It used to be very uncommon. All right. So nowadays, it's almost normalized. All right, to work in a situation where you're working with people with multiple genders, multiple, backgrounds, ethnicities, races, even religious backgrounds. So, all kinds of different things out there. As this is like 30 years ago, that would be unthinkable. And now it's like normal. That's cool. All right. So this age one needs to go down we need to attack this one next. All right. Because this one is it persists. So, and we all buy into it on a certain level. Don't do that. So the next time you're on LinkedIn or something like that, it's giving you like a millennial quiz. Don't take it. Don't encourage that. All right. I mean, I could go ad nauseum about this stuff because I've actually dived into the rabbit hole on it a little bit. But anyway, let's move on. So I think we all get what stereotyping is, and it's bad. Don't do that. All right? Selective perception is much, much different. All right, so because selective perception is a process by which we systematically screen out information we don't want to hear, and we focus on more salient information. Remember, salient information, that stuff that's like here and now and we can focus on. It's tangible, all right? So it's the cell phones in the classroom. It's the people who are 2 minutes late. It's the unpolished pairs of shoes, things like that. But selective perception becomes much, much more dangerous because it means that we're going to start to ignore information that we don't want to hear. So we start screening it out. So this is a real problem with social media, and I think you guys can speak on this one with a little bit more authority than I can. So let me give it to you kind of from my perspective here, but I want you to think about this a little bit on your own. Like how bad selective perception is getting. This is why I think this one's getting worse, is because we can literally, it's no longer at the point in time where we have to listen to other people just in order to fill up time. Okay? So, and think about this. If you've ever been stuck on a job, okay, or a group, or, it's just some kind of thing where you were literally, you were forced to sit and get to know somebody else, all right, over a certain amount of time. And maybe they come from a very different background. Maybe they have very different views on things in terms of, like, how they see the world, what they think is right, what they think we should do, qualifying information, all kinds of different stuff. But, if you're forced to sit with somebody, and I remember this, like, back from the days where I used to work graveyard shift. Okay, it would be me and like 2 or 3 other people here basically holding down the fort at night. We don't have a TV, okay, and so literally we just start engaging with each other. We'd start picking on each other, and we start telling stories, swapping views on things and stuff like that. But I was forced to do so in that case because I couldn't take out my phone and say, hey, let me pull up ESPN.com here and say, let me see what's going on, or let me get on the Facebook, or what's trending on Twitter and stuff like that. Nowadays, I can actually disengage from those people around me and just go find the things that I want, all right? And, it's really kind of like disconcerting that a lot of the algorithms out there, particularly the Facebook one, oh, there's a movie on that you should watch. What is it? God, I'll have to go look that up. It just came out like last year or something. It might be on Netflix, come to think of it, where it's like basically it's showing you how the algorithm is designed to engage you as somebody by literally just putting things in front of you that it knows that you'll engage with, okay? Whereas, maybe a little bit before, or if you put the phone down kind of thing, or don't get on the YouTube, that's ironic. You do have this opportunity to actually engage with people who don't necessarily agree with everything that you have to say. Okay, and so selective perception is the real problem here because there's a lot of selection out there, and you can go out, there's so much content out there that you can go find whatever it is that you want to find. Yes, I think it is. It's Social Dilemma. Yeah, I thought the movie was a little cheesy in some respects, but what it's telling you is actually true, which is kind of scary. So yeah, it's exactly like selective hearing. Yeah, no, absolutely, Harley. Some people are more blasé about it. They just choose not to hear those things. But selective perception is almost like you don't give yourself the opportunity to hear them, okay? Which is much, much more dangerous, all right? Because it becomes normalized after a while. It's like, and then if you've ever been in a situation like, and I mean, everybody's had opportunities for this, over the last year. Hopefully now it's kind of chilling out a little bit. I'm hopeful, But you had opportunities to hear like you had the opportunity to hear things that, I mean, I didn't know that some of that stuff was out there, okay? I mean, all of a sudden it boils up on the news in some respects. It's like, what? People believe what? How, where? I've never met anybody who did that, And so it's not one of those things anymore where you really, it's selective hearing, because it's not like I have someone who's telling me that. It's like I never even got the opportunity to hear that, let alone like shut that off, And so I think selective perception has gotten a lot worse, all right? And so, all right, so don't worry about the society, level, politics, blah, blah, blah. Think about this as a manager, okay? Because if you're in a situation as a manager, where, you know, okay, so you know that there's some bad things going on in the office. My favorite example of this is any form of sexual harassment. If you know sexual harassment is going on in the office, you must do something about it, okay? All right? But it is really hard, okay? Because here, first of all, if someone calls somebody else out for sexual harassment and you're a manager in that situation, okay, the onus is upon you to instantaneously act, all right? Say the person who is doing the accusing is not a terribly reliable employee who has caused problems in the past. Maybe his or her performance has been, you know, a little bit lackluster, and maybe you know that person is really ambitious, okay? And so, you know, you've watched them over the year or so that they've worked there, and they're just constantly asking about when do I get the next promotion, stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. You can kind of see where this is going, all right? Say the person who is the accused, all right, regardless of gender, he or she, in this situation, you know, is a stellar employee, very solid, very stalwart, you know, always has been there for you and things like that. Okay, so automatically you're going to have this selective perception problem because you don't want to hear all the stuff that's coming out of this person's mouth because you like this other person. They're solid, they've done right by you. You've never gotten a whiff or a hint of this on your own, okay? This is a selective perception problem. Guess what? Just because you don't want to hear that information doesn't mean that you don't need to take this as seriously as you possibly can, okay? Because really when it comes down to it, it might be true. Okay? And so in a situation like that, I've seen so many managers stumble. I've done it myself. I've stumbled in this situation where it's like, oh, no, man, you know, or in other cases, it's like, oh, man, that guy's always doing things like that, you know? So, but really when it comes down to it, you got to do something about this, all right? Because really, if there's even the possibility that something legit is going on there and someone is actually going through this in your workplace and you're the manager who decides to shut that down just because you don't want to hear it, congratulations, that entire problem is now your fault. All right, and you deserve all the consequences you get out of it. But again, we get that selective perception thing. Oh, I don't want to hear that. So just be very, very careful with this stuff because it does have real world implications beyond, you know, like, you know, I don't know, elections and stuff like that. It's going to affect your life directly, all right, as a manager if you start to fall into this trap. So just be careful about it. And I guess the only advice that I can give you, whether it be on social media or elsewhere, is just deal with people earnestly, okay? And what I mean by that is if someone's got a complaint, listen to them honestly. Don't jump to conclusions on it right off the bat. Same thing, you know, if someone says, hey, this is a problem in the office, give them 5 minutes and listen to them, all right? So, you know, you'll be able to make that determination in the long run. Same thing, you know, if someone's telling you something that you don't want to hear, you know, rather than that being an excuse to dismiss them, you should use that as an opportunity to lean into what they're having to say. Okay, so well, I don't want to hear this. Okay, so tell me more about this. Okay, so because if it becomes a problem that you can actually, like, maybe sometimes you can see through it, but maybe in other times it's actually legit and it's just something that you haven't considered, then it's really important to actually pay attention in situations like that. And so, I mean, we're going to come to that in the future when we talk about things like communication and whatnot, but active listening is a really killer skill. It really is. And it means that, yeah, there's times where you're going to have to listen to things that you don't want to hear, but you'll be better for it. Trust me. All right. So, no matter how crazy it might be. So anyway, final barrier to social perception is perceptual defense. God dang it, my clock is jacked up. All right. I owe you guys one more question here. Then we'll talk about this, and then we'll come back. So here we go. One more soccer question here. Let's see. Let's go. Let's see. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of these. I don't want to do these kind of esoteric ones. Oh, that's back from 2017. I always look for these ones that are like very kind of like straightforward. Let's see. I don't know which ones are hard and which ones aren't. So you're just gonna bear with me here. So here real quick. So hang on. I gotta find another site. This one went sour on me here pretty quick. I just googled that one, so I can't do that. I don't know what that means. I don't think the site was actually originally written in English. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Which team has reached the final 3 times but has yet to win the World Cup? Which team has reached the final 3 times but has yet to win the World Cup? That's interesting. 3 times. Wow. All right, here we go. So 3 times, no dice. Who we got? Actually, yeah, just a couple. Yeah. So I remember watching one of these. That's not the answer that I've got. Yeah. Marcus, that's it. Yeah, so I've got the Netherlands as well. So let's just Google that here real quick. Which country has gone to the World Cup 3 times and never won? Let's see. You say the Dutch. Yep, it's the Netherlands. All right, good. So, but looks like, Marcus, you beat everybody to it. So, good job. Yeah. Let's see. Didn't they go just a couple years ago? So, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe they got really high, really far in the final. Maybe that's what it was. It also says England, doesn't it? There we go. Where does it say that? Where are you seeing that, Harley? Well, we're definitely giving it to Marcus here, but if it says England too. All right, so we got 3 people who say that it also says England. Why does your Google tell you something that mine doesn't? So there's a question for you. All right, so we'll give it to Dean as well. Good job. All right, we'll do one more here in just a minute. So we're almost at the hour mark here, so I want to knock out this perceptual defense piece. All right, because it does have a really good, some recommendations here for you. So final barrier to social perception is perceptual defense. It's related to these 3 principles. Emotionally disturbing or threatening stimuli have a higher recognition threshold than neutral. And so if you find something that really gets under your skin or something like that, so you get triggered by it, all right? So then you're much more likely to engage in this perceptual defense. Such stimuli are likely to elicit substitute perceptions that are radically altered so as to prevent recognition of the presented stimuli. And these critical stimuli arouse emotional reactions even though the stimuli themselves are not necessarily recognized as being emotional. Okay, and so if you do have something out there that really, really gets under your skin, okay, so it becomes very, very difficult to actually entertain any reasons why that might be, okay? Or listen to somebody who maybe engages in such things, okay? So, and what we do when we engage our perceptual defenses is just think of it like this. It's the la 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 kind of thing. And I mean, that sounds silly, all right? But at the same point in time, what we do is we just find new ways to feed that emotional response, all right? Or, try and find ways to either deaden it at that moment or replace it with another reality, okay, that is almost serves as a substitute in some ways. So perceptual defense becomes difficult to eradicate, all right, because it involves emotion on such a level that it becomes really difficult to deal with. And so if you have employees who start engaging in perception, no, it's not happening, it's not going to work like that, blah, 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 they just swat down all of your things, it's usually because there's some kind of emotional response. And if you can think of emotion, we'll talk about this more in the future, but there's only a few different types of emotions, really, when it comes down to it. And so, like, fear is definitely one of them. Anger is another. Okay? And so if you trigger either one of those two in your employees in one way, really what they're doing is they're engaging in perceptual defense against that specific emotion. All right, and so it's difficult to get around this once it's actually been, basically once the defenses are up, okay, because anytime that you try and approach this issue in the same way or even in a different way, because oftentimes employees, they're smart enough to know it's like, oh, Pat's going to talk about layoffs again, or something like that, you're going to instigate that response, okay? And so the best thing that you can do in these situations is to, there's a couple of different things you can do. So the worst thing you can do is ignore it, okay? And just, we'll talk about it later. It's not going to work, okay? Because you're not addressing the issue at that point in time. Probably the best thing to do is to identify exactly what they're trying to do and accomplish here. And so there are some different strategies that people use, all right, in order to deal with this, all right? The first one is denial. And so, the denial is just, no, that's not going to happen. Don't worry about it. All right, and so if you recognize that response in some respects, that one's a little bit easier to deal with because usually you can confront that one with fact. But remember, you're dealing with emotion here, and so dealing with emotion by nuking it with facts doesn't negate the emotion, okay? All right, but you can say, hey, look, we're going to go through this. I understand that you're going to have a lot of trouble finding a new job and things like that. How can I help you? Okay, and so you can use facts to kind of pull the emotion from it and then deal with those two things a little bit separately, because if I can deal with the fact that, you're not going to have a job, all right, is what's driving this emotion on this side. Well, if I can attack that, then I can alleviate this in some respects. And honestly, I've been in situations where I did have to lay off a workforce, and it's not fun. It sucks. Okay, there's nothing about it that is enjoyable, especially when it's kind of your fault. Okay, so, and it was in my case because, it wasn't entirely my fault, but I should have been a little bit more honest with the folks who were working with me coming up front. Well, I should have been a little bit more realistic. Let me put it that way. I wasn't deceiving them or anything like that. It was just like, nah, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. We're taking care of it and stuff. In the back of my mind, I was kind of like, oh man, this might be bad. Okay, and I wasn't honest with them up front and things like that. But then once we actually got the point in time where it was obvious that we weren't going to get this contract and I was going to have to lay off a bunch of people, it was like, this is my bad, guys. I'm going to do everything that I can to help you find a job. And I did. I started calling around competitors and things like that. Said, hey, this is what's going on. We're folding shop. I've got these guys. They're great. Do you have any openings? I didn't get everybody out, but I got enough out there to make myself feel a little bit better about it. All right, but still at the same point in time, it was the fear of losing a job, and I could alleviate that fear with some of those folks. I don't know if you'll have the opportunity to do the same thing, but when you face a problem where people are just flat out denying things, understand that the reason why the denial exists is because there's an emotion tied to that. All right, so what's causing the emotion? All right, so that's more important. So there's a lot of ways we could talk about that. All right, let's move on though. All right, modification distortion. This one's hands down the most frequent. All right. Explain away the perceptual concept by joining intelligence with some other characteristics. For instance, so this one here is talking about a study that these guys actually did in a factory here. But so if you don't understand what they're saying here, just read this piece up here. But modification and distortion is it's not quite as it's not as hard of a defense as flat out denial. Okay, it's more so along the lines where, say, okay, I have to lay off a bunch of people. I'm going to tell you, hey, we're going to have to lay off a bunch of people. I'll have more details for you next week. All right, and then I don't give you more details than that, so the employees turn around and say, oh, well, he's not really going to do, or he's only going to lay off these guys, or, he's only going to have to lay off, the night shift or something like that. And that's where they take a little bit of the truth and then bend it so that it fits their benefit, all right, in some ways or another. And then they have to evangelize that. They have to go out and tell other people, oh, no, that's just night shift or something like that, And so that one's hands down the most common. How do you deal with this one as a manager? Well, first of all, you have to think about like, all right, so what information can I give out? All right, and if there's information that I cannot give out, what are they going to think? All right, in order to make it work. So you have to get ahead of this problem before it gets out there. All right, so a classic example of this is like modification distortion. All right, so say you do have to fire someone, and say it is for something really gnarly, okay, like sexual harassment or something like that. All right, and at this point in time, okay, so you're going to be locked down by your HR. They're going to say, do not talk to anybody about this. Okay, so this is going to be definitely a private affair. You're going to be legally liable in some respects if you actually break confidence on this, blah, 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 all kinds of different things like that. All right, but still, okay, I have to fire Bob, all right, so because Bob was, getting a little handsy with Susie. All right, and so Bob's gone now, and everybody else in the office is going to notice that Bob's gone. All right, Susie's not going to say anything. All right, because she's embarrassed. She feels ashamed about this entire thing. The last thing that I want to do is come out. Well, Bob got blah, 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 that's going to make that a million times what I say, and HR would fire me at that point, rightfully so. All right, but still, everybody's going to turn around and say, well, what happened to Bob? Where'd he go? He was a cool guy, man. We used to go have beers on Friday, kind of thing. All right, and so there are ways in which you can think right off the bat where people are going to start to pencil in information. Because if you go, sorry, Bob's not here with us anymore. And then they turn around, well, what happened to Bob? And you say, well, I can't talk about it. Bob's not here anymore. So they're going to just get curious at that point in time. And so maybe they'll call Bob and they'll find out his side of the story. And that's bad. Okay. Or maybe they'll, maybe one or two of them saw something, but they didn't want to say anything. And so it'll immediately come out, which means not only did they out Bob at that point in time, but they've outed his victim as well. Okay. And so you have to think about the different things that they'll say. All right. Before they actually say them. Because remember, oftentimes, it's perception that's more important than the truth. And so here's a little pro tip on how you handle something like this, all right? Because you have to get the right information out before this kicks in. If this kicks in and it gets into that rumor mill, it's like having grease in the machine. You're never going to get it all out of there, okay? So, but if you know, okay, they're going to do this because I can't tell them exactly what's going on with this one. So in this case, you got to get ahead of the information in some ways and set it up so that they can invent their own stories, but only within the context of what's actually true. All right. So without knowing the entire thing. Now that doesn't make a lot of sense. So let me illustrate. I did have to do this at one point in time in my career where we did have to let somebody go due to an extremely inappropriate situation. I won't go into details on that one, but let's just say sometimes people do fairly shocking things. All right, and I know I got a little smile on this one, but it actually was a really ugly situation. It just blew my mind though. But and see, like you're already like, well, what happened? And so in this situation, I had to actually let somebody go who was in a position of trust, okay, over other individuals associated with the organization. And I knew it was going to be a big scandal, and I knew that everybody was going to know within about 5 minutes. All right, and so in that case, if I got out there and if I said, oh, well, I can't talk about it, everybody would look at me and was like, well, we all know anyway, and then it would just encourage them to actually go out there and look at it a little bit more. And so in this particular case, it was very straightforward. I mean, I had to bring everybody together, and I said, hey, so-and-so is no longer with us. I had to let them go today. For legal reasons, I cannot tell you exactly why I decided to let them go. But at the same point in time, I want you to read up on Section 8 in the HR manual and let me know if you have any specific questions about any of those policies. And Section 8 was absolutely our, whole section on sexual harassment. And so by very, carefully and clinically stating that, okay, I need to make sure that you're all on board with this. All right. I was also signaling at the same time, this is what's going on. All right. I know that it's going on. I know that you are going to know what's going on. And I know that you need to keep a lid on it too. Okay. So pointing them right back to the policy at that point in time was kind of the saving grace. And that was actually something that I learned from an old school manager that I had who taught me a lot of these little tricks. that help in situations like that. But when it comes to modification distortion, you got to get ahead of it. So change in perception, sometimes when people actually are confronted with facts that don't jive, and so they engage in this perceptual defense, sometimes they are in a position to actually say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm in the wrong here. Okay, don't count on it. But when it happens, it's a gift horse. Don't look it in the mouth. All right. And then the last one is this recognition but refusal to change. Sometimes you will have people who will say, all right, I'm in the wrong on this, but you know what? I'm 2 years away from retirement. Or the classic one that you hear is like, I'm too old to change, kind of thing, or something like that. That's a person that you're just going to have to deal with. All right. They are going to come up. And it's going to happen in certain cases in your career. And I mean, I went through the whole computer revolution where, my very first job, we didn't even have computers, all right, there, even though later on we did. And so I've been through every tech change from 1995 on. So ever since Windows 95 came out, I've seen all of those. And at the same point in time, there's always been people who just, they're not, yeah, I need to use this, but, I'm not gonna, all right? I'm going to be really blunt with you. When you run into people like that, eventually you just got to find ways to phase them out, okay? So, if you have someone who recognizes, gone through their mental gymnastics of actually recognizing, is like, oh, this is the way of the future, or this is the way things are now, but then they still refuse to change. Those are people who are not on board with things. And okay, so you got 3 more years to retirement. All right, so you're not allowed to touch these things anymore. There's boxes that need to be broken down in the back. Get at it. I'm sorry. Sometimes that's all you can do in situations like that. And so the trick, again, with anything in here in perceptual defense is just make sure that people know on a certain level that, it's an emotional response. It's an emotional response. So if you can understand the emotion, you can usually anticipate how people are going to react. Then you can develop some of the strategies to deal with each of these 3, all right, or 4 in this case. You might have to build a penalty box for some people. If you're not going to get on board with this, go sit in a box. So people don't like to be treated like children. I get it. So, but sometimes that's you guys get to play in the playpen. Everybody else gets to sit at the big boy table. So, anyway, there we go. That's it for perception. We went a little long today, so I apologize for that. If there's any questions, comments, concerns on this, please post them up in there. I'll stick around here for a couple more minutes, but let's get you one more soccer question for today, and then we'll call it good. Let me see. This is interesting. Yeah, I don't know how let's see. So many names, I just don't know. Let's see. I don't know what that is. Yeah, sorry. This is not a topic that I'm too up to speed on. So the quality of the sites that I'm getting here are doubtable. Oh, here's one that I think everybody can actually get on board with. And we can Google it very easily. The FA, the Football Association, was founded in which year? In which year was the FA, the Football Association, founded? Go. I think this is the English one, if I'm not mistaken. So, there we go. Wow, it is older than I thought it was. So, Dean, you got it. 1863 is what I've got. So, (1000 BC). 1863 in London. There we go. Yeah, 1000 BC. I like your optimism, but no. All right, good job. So let's see. So who are winners today? Oh, actually, Dean, you already got one from England up here because I was going to give you that one. So we got to give that one to Andy. Good job. So good job, Andy. You got one in there, 1863. You were 2,800 years off. That's okay, man. So, you know, it's the blink of an eye. So, in terms of the cosmos, not a problem. You and me, yeah, maybe a little bit more of a problem. So, all right, folks. So, I've got 4 winners for you today. If you want any of these, please hit me up, email me, let me know which quiz or homework you want off. Be specific with those two. All right, so say like I want chapter 13 quiz or whatever. Okay, so just dive into the Blackboard there and figure out which ones you need, and I'll send you a receipt on each one of those. And so if you don't get my receipt by Wednesday, ping me. All right, but other than that, we are in good shape. So. You don't get 3 in one day. So, how many did you get? You got 1? I see you got 1. You got England in there. Yeah. So no, man, we don't triple up. So we did last week just because I jacked you out of trivia the other week, and so I had to open it up. But no, man, you get 1 per day. Yeah, I know. Last week I had to open it up. Yeah, because I didn't do trivia the week before because I was stuck in an appointment. Yeah, so no, 1 per day. So I got you covered though, man. So yeah. But, yeah, just let me know which one you want. All right? So I'll stick around here for a couple more minutes. If you have any questions other than that, we'll see you guys. Having a wonderful afternoon. Weather's pretty decent out there, so I hope you get a chance to enjoy it. Other than that, we'll see you again on Wednesday. Bye, Harley. You bet, Dean. Take care. Thanks for being a good sport. So... All right, guys, here we go. 30 seconds. Warning. Something is going on with my recording software here, too. I don't know what. All right, here we go. See y'all.